Welcome to US Tzu Chi 360. I'm Ginger Chang. Today we bring you Jimmy Woo's story again and focus on the re-entry of inmates, a key moment after they are released from prison. According to the National Institute of Justice, a majority of inmates leave prison with no savings, are largely uneducated and unskilled, that after 1 year of release, 60% of former inmates have trouble finding employment in the legitimate labor market. One individual who is at the forefront assisting ex-offenders transition smoothly into society is Nicole Rochad. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you.
So first off, can you tell us a little bit more at what you do at the New York Office of Appellate Defender?
Yes, so the Office of the Appellate Defender, known as OAD, represents indigent defendants on their criminal appeals cases. So once you're convicted of a crime already, whether by a guilty plea or at trial, you can file an appeal on your case. So our office represents people who are mostly incarcerated long-term in upstate New York, in New York State prisons. The majority of people coming out of prison in New York State are on parole or post-release supervision. So your first level of challenge is that you are mandated to oblige by their rules for anywhere from 5 years to the rest of your life. So the threat of being re-incarcerated is always hanging over your head. I would say second is housing. New York City has a major housing crisis, whether or not you've been in prison. Oftentimes people haven't maintained any family ties, and so they're essentially homeless. They are sent through the homeless shelter system or into three-quarter houses by parole. These places are drug-ridden, crime-ridden, very unstable, not safe, and I haven't had a client receive their own permanent housing in under 2 years once entering this process. So it's a very long, difficult process to negotiate and sort of maintain your composure, especially if you're trying to piece together the rest of your life. Then there are the obvious factors, like people don't want to give people jobs with felony records. Parole has discretion over what kind of job you can work or not.
Wow.
So I've had clients who've been able to get jobs as personal trainers or at gyms or this or that, and the parole officer says no for whatever reason they find fit.
Well, Nicole, you bring up some really good points, because when Jimmy was released, he was shy and shocked by how much the world changed. Because after being in jail for 13 and a half years, his life there was pretty much set in routine. Let's go take a look in the first segment.
I was released June 28th, 2009, after serving 13 and a half years in prison, and it was the most happy day of my life, of course, and it is a day that I will never forget. I was picked up by my girlfriend at about 7 a.m. that morning. The first thing that she wanted me to do, she wanted me to strip naked in the parking lot and douse myself with a gallon of water, because she believed that I needed to wash away the evil spirits from my body before getting into her car. Of course, we weren't able to do that because I was still on prison grounds. So she drove me to a gas station. It was my first walk in the free world, and there were cars at the gas station waiting, having their tanks filled. And as I was walking by these cars, I just had this sudden fear that they were somehow going to just hit me, because I had not been around a moving vehicle for a very long time. And when I was around a moving vehicle, it was always being under escort while I was handcuffed and shackled. So in that way, I felt a bit protected, because I knew that there were officers around me and things like that. And of course, this was, again, my first walk as a free person after 13 years of incarceration.
It's like superstition, I guess, in, my culture, that you wash the bad away and you throw away the clothes that you wore in there because you don't want to take it with you. I brought him new clothes, I brought him a gallon of water, and I told him I wanted him to change, because I didn't want him, to start his new life with everything he's already been through.
I was terrified. I ran back to my girlfriend's car after I was done cleansing myself and changing my clothes. So
Tell us what it took for you to do that, to get out. What did you do? What did you do when you was 18 right there? What did you think?
Now I'm going to do whatever it takes to survive. Do whatever it takes. So I can prove people like you wrong. So I can make it up to my family. So I cannot feel like a failure. And I'm going to free myself because you don't hold my mind. You can hold my body, but you can't hold my mind. That's the one thing you can never have. That's the one thing that will always belong to me.
When he first came to the class, he'd only been out of jail 3 months. So there was still that cultural shock of having been in custody for so long, and him being out of custody, he wasn't maybe really sure of himself. He was kind of very humble and very shy in the class. And then, as over the years, he's opened up, and I've maintained a relationship with Jimmy since he left this class. And in fact, as a probation commissioner, I've had Jimmy talk to the probation commission. I know he goes out and talks to the community groups, sharing his experience, trying to help others. And so he's grown a lot, and it's a positive growth, and it makes me very happy and very proud of him.
This is Mr. Jimmy Wu, one of my former students. Jimmy, this is my class. I give a little brief bio on you.
Oh, okay.
But you can give the detailed bio.
Yeah, so I met Mr. Merritt about 2 years ago. My favorite spot was actually like right there. And it was a class.
Jimmy has the background that can help influence the students because this is a community college. Many of my students come from the community, and oftentimes many of my students are in fact criminal street gang members, and they're either trying to move forward in their life or they're here because they're curious about what can happen. And you get somebody like Jimmy who can tell them what can happen, give them a better understanding because they don't really understand the realities and the finality of a conviction in some of these cases. Some of my students come from gang backgrounds, some don't come from gang backgrounds, some have never even seen a gang member other than on TV, and they have this TV perception. So when Jimmy comes in and talks about his crime, having done his time, and why he was at risk and how to move forward from it, I think it's important because my students are going to go out into careers where they're going to be dealing with people, either law enforcement or probation, whatever it may be, and they have a need to understand where people are coming from to try and help them move forward with their lives.
I used to want to be from a gang. My family were involved with gangs. Everybody has their share of problems. Yeah, Jimmy will help you out. He's a good man. He's a good man. So yeah, thank you for coming to our class.
What was your name?
Cipriano.
Cipriano Willis. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too, man.
Take care.
All right, you too.
I'm going to free myself because you don't hold my mind. You can hold my body, but you can't hold my mind. That's the one thing you can never have. That's the one thing that will always belong to me. And I'm going to write my ass off, and I'm going to do whatever I can to touch as many people as I can out there, to share my message, to let them know what I'm about, that I'm not afraid. I'm not with you. And I'm going to prove you wrong. You're going to be my motivation.
I think it's profound to get to hear someone talk so openly and honestly about what it's like to be incarcerated. I think it's something that I have wondered about but have not been able to ask anyone about, and I think it's a very important thing to know about. His openness about that is a huge gift.
I was used to very bland, dark colors in prison. Coming into a Walmart, all these colors are so extremely vivid. Okay, there's every color imaginable. The scents were extremely overwhelming. Okay, and then the noise, the clanking of the cartwheels, and then the people talking to each other and everything, it was just so overwhelming. And then the main thing that made me freeze was the movement of people. In prison, it's more or less like a fishbowl. I compare it to a fishbowl because you can only go from one point to another before you come right back to where you began. And there's always someone constantly watching you. The inmates in prison basically walk in slow motion because there is no concern of time. You have nothing but time. What is the rush? You have nowhere to go. Everybody out here is crazy. Everybody is like, they're going fast forward. We're bouncing around from place to place to place to place. And so like all these people are rushing, just trying to grab all their stuff and get in line and everything. And I was like, oh my God.
You bring that up
When I first met Jimmy, he was working down in the ports. He had a job that was making him a little bit of money, but he wasn't feeling that it was satisfying his desire to really contribute to social change. And he took this great leap of faith by quitting his job, cutting off his source of income, and just showing up wherever he felt he could be useful to help support the restorative justice movement, to contribute to whatever he could do. And so he's been doing that for a number of months now, and as far as I can tell, he's been really successful, and it's really inspiring to see that.
According to the Reentry Policy Council, nearly 650,000 inmates are released from U.S. jails annually, each of them challenged to keep up to the changing times and overcoming the socioeconomic stigma imposed on them by society. It's also due to these barriers that 52% return to prison for a new crime or violating parole. Nicole, so in terms of this, what is the OAD doing in helping them find education and employment?
Our office tries to essentially fill in the gaps of services that they're not getting. Parole's mandating them to like a set number of programs that they have direct relationships with, but often they don't know our clients the same way that we do, and we have the time and flexibility to really get to know them and understand sort of their needs and skills and abilities and interests. So once we get to that point, we will try to find different education and employment programs that would best match them, and we really have the time to give them a lot of individualized attention and support.
So let's go see how Jimmy learned to forgive his troubled past.
He still has plenty to deal with. Just trying to build a career when you have that conviction record on your, on your record, that's hard, that's challenging. And there's going to, throughout his life, there are going to be people who are going to make assumptions about him because of his past. They're going to, not listen to the whole story. They're going to blah, blah, blah. There's going to be all kinds of challenges he will continue to face.
How you going to make it? You stress your parents out.
But the thing is, you look at him now and you see he's going to face them. He has that basic, what I call ballast. A boat, if a boat doesn't have much weight in the bottom, a wave will easily turn it over and it'll sink. But if the boat has good weight down at the bottom and a good rudder so that it stays on a straight path, no matter how big the wave is, it will bounce back up. And that's what I feel now. I look at Jimmy and I see he has that now.
How many days pass by and you don't think about jail?
Since I've been home?
Yeah.
Not many. Every time I look in the mirror after I shower, it reminds me.
Every day you need to
take tattoos.
Right.
So I'm always constantly reminded by it.
Right. So some society members will always see him in this, that no matter what. And so today we did an exercise in what it feels like to just be out of your character, your safe zone.
I've told Jimmy it's unfathomable for me to conceive of the amount of time that he served. 13 or 14 Christmases away from home is a really long time. And it takes great will and resolve and discipline to get through it and then come out on the other side stronger. And that's what separates Jimmy from, unfortunately, so many young men and women that return to prison. If you were to ask anyone in federal prison or state prison, how many of you plan to come back? No hands would come up. Yet studies show recidivism rates are very high. It's a revolving door. So many are going back. So what separates Jimmy is not that he just served a lengthy prison term. There's a lot of guys doing that. It's the success that he's had upon release. But it didn't happen by accident. And that's why so many are anxious to work with him or to support him or to want to get in his corner because he's earned it. Nothing's been given to him. He's educated. He writes well. He speaks well. He is not what you would expect of a long-term prisoner. He's different than guys that a lot of guys who have served 13 or 14 or 15 years who unfortunately too many waste their time away with table games and TV and walking the track, and he's different from that. So it motivates people, and he shows a lot of hope to the young prisoners because they can relate to him. They can relate to the struggle. He has real lessons.
I have read some of the experiences that Jimmy has had in juvenile hall, where he shares his relationship and the conversations that he has with some of the youth, and it's just so beautiful to see that Jimmy welcomes the opportunity to feel the pain that young people are feeling in juvenile halls and to accompany them and hold that pain and to value it. It's not just this process in his head, that, I think I need to help people because, people might have helped me through the system or because I don't want them to go through what I've gone through. It comes from the heart. It comes from a place very, very deep within Jimmy. And I remember almost immediately after he got out of prison, he went into a job that I don't think he cared about very much because he wasn't being fulfilled. He wasn't feeling, fulfillment. And he had this enormous desire. I mean, he would call me and text me. He's like, I want to help other kids. I want to be doing this. And quite honestly, I was fearful that he was going to be so disillusioned and disappointed because those opportunities weren't coming right away that he was going to give up on it. But he never did. He kept on looking for ways to get in, and he met different people, and he, just kept beating that drum until those doors started to open. He's opened those doors for himself, and it's very admirable.
I actually met Jimmy at a conference, at a game conference in San Francisco. He sat in on one of the discussions that I gave. And, he just has that energy, right? You can tell that his heart is completely committed to his own recovery and that of giving back to the young men and women so then he can provide them with mentorship.
We are 5 dots, and the 5 dots at one time in my life stood for Asian pride because, of course, I was in prison and, everything is separated by race in prison, so I was with the Asians, and it just was a symbol, again, for me to show other people that, hey, I'm Asian and I'm proud of being Asian. So it's so different because the culture is completely different. Many people in prison have tattoos, and it's on display. They're proud of it. They want everybody to see this is who I am. Look at my tattoos and stuff like that. But out here, it's different. In the free world now, people want to cover their tattoos, especially if it's stupid like these. They're embarrassed of it. So I think it's kind of strange how it's such different worlds. In prison, you are proud of it. You want people to perceive you as a hardened criminal. Of course, in the free world, you want to disguise everything. You want to hide everything because you no longer want people to think of you as a criminal. You want people to think of you as a professional, as an everyday person. And I am guilty of that as well. I used to be proud of these, and now I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. So that's why I'm getting these removed.
And the others feel pain, even though if I'm not getting them, he's gonna.
I had heard a lot about him, so I had already heard that he was wonderful, and he is. That's my experience of working with him. He's very intelligent, and he's a very hard worker, and he has a good understanding of what my clients have been through. That's tremendously helpful. These days, most of my work as a lawyer is representing inmates in prison who are called lifers because they've been given a sentence of life in prison. However, under some circumstances and at a certain point in the time that they're in prison, they can go through a process to be allowed to parole, to leave prison. And I represent them in those parole hearings, help them prepare for their parole hearings, help them prepare for parole. And Jimmy's very helpful because he has a pretty good idea of what they're going through, even though he was never a lifer himself. And he's a really fine writer, so that is very helpful, having somebody who writes as well as he does.
When I first came on board here at Inside Out Writers, I charged myself with meeting with those folks that really were critical to the success of this organization. And Jimmy's name continued to come up as someone that I needed to meet with. They said, you have to meet Jimmy Woo. And so I said, okay, I'll get to it. And then finally, I was
was able to connect with him, and we had a meeting here at IOW, and at that time I clearly understood why everyone was adamant about my meeting him. I was hugely impressed with his passion, his knowledge, and his commitment to helping minors detained in these juvenile facilities. He is someone that's been an advocate for them, and someone that truly understands what these young people are going through, having been through it himself. So he is someone that I greatly admire and respect for the work that he's done.
Jimmy had asked me, he goes, I'm going to put you down as a reference. And I said, that's fine. And they called me and they said, we're doing a reference check on Jimmy and this is what we'd like to know. And so I gave him my recommendation, both as his professor and both also as a probation commissioner, that I strongly encourage them to hire him because he does make a difference in people's lives. One day he's going to be a leader and a very important person in our community, our state, and probably in our country. He's going to go places. He's got the motivation, the determination, and you know, there's an old saying about you pull yourself up by the bootstraps and move forward. He's done that and going beyond my expectations so soon. I mean, it's been less than 3 years.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And the thing that was so beautiful about Jimmy was it wasn't how you can help me, but what can I do for you? And he has always put his passion for the program, for other juveniles, front and center. And he's never, ever, ever complained, which worries me because I'm afraid he's going to be selling pencils outside the church to make ends meet. No, seriously, I know it's going to work out.
I feel now that whatever Jimmy does, with as a person, as a friend, but as a writer especially, I will enjoy seeing where it goes. He's going to make something positive with that gift of writing that he has, whether it will be a book, whether it will be articles, whether it will be just letters to people who will collect them and then later publish them. We have no idea, but he's already doing it. He doesn't need to become anything or finish anything. He's complete.
Well, thank you very much for following me these past few months. I hope that you all learned something new, and I hope to see you all again soon. Bye.
Nicole, as we just saw, Jimmy was able to successfully transition from prison life to normal life in society now. So can you tell us more how effective has OAD been to address the issue of recidivism?
One of my graduate student interns last year pulled our internal data for the years 2006 and 2007 and compared it to the state rate of recidivism for those years and found that we had a significantly lower rate of recidivism. So it feels successful, and we're continuing to collect this data.
Please continue what you're doing because you're representing a population that believes that they've been forgotten and unwanted. So Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
And my team and I would like to personally thank Jimmy and his family for letting us into their lives. I'm Ginger Chang, and I'll see you next week.